They were once the dynamic duo of reality TV, inseparable, unstoppable, and beloved by millions. But now, one is buried in the ground, and the other has dropped lifeless in a courtroom. What happened? How did a decade-long friendship built on antique hunts and road trips unravel into bloodshed and betrayal? Could there have been a dark feud brewing behind the scenes all along? Today, we dig into the shocking truth behind the tragic death of American Pickers star Frank Fritz and the stunning courtroom sentence faced by his former friend and co-host, Mike Wolfe. The death of Frank Fritz sent shockwaves through the fan community, not only because they lost a beloved television icon, but also because of the heartbreaking truths that began to emerge from behind the show's innocent facade. Frank, the heart and soul of American Pickers, had quietly disappeared from the spotlight, his passing attributed to a massive stroke that left him physically and mentally exhausted. But the deeper the investigation, the stranger things got. Medical records didn't match the evidence found at the scene. Rumors were rife. Frank had reportedly confided to friends that he felt watched, even hunted. He once admitted that he believed people were trying to silence him. At the time, many assumed it was depression-induced paranoia. That all changed when an autopsy revealed something chilling: traces of poison in his blood. Mike Wolfe, Frank's longtime co-host and once trusted friend, appeared devastated in the media, shedding tears and expressing disbelief. But sharp-eyed investigators noticed troubling inconsistencies from his statements to the timeline, to a series of suspicious financial transactions. Slowly, the puzzle came together: a large money transfer, a conveniently disabled surveillance camera on the night Frank was found, and a mysterious DNA sample inside Frank's home. As the police peeled back the layers, a darker picture of their relationship emerged. Off-screen, there were explosive arguments, unresolved resentment, and a growing sense of betrayal. Frank felt replaced and discarded. Mike, fearing Frank's possible return to the show and the secrets he might expose, was allegedly pushed to a breaking point. The trial gripped the nation. Weeks of haunting testimony and hard evidence led to a shocking conclusion. But just as justice was closing in, Mike Wolfe collapsed in the courtroom dead, taking the final answers with him. Was this the end of a tragic tale of friendship gone wrong, or the beginning of something even darker in the cutthroat world of reality television, where fame, loyalty, and betrayal often collide in deadly ways? Their lives were once inseparable, but when news of Frank Fritz's sudden death at home broke, the public was stunned and heartbroken. Social media was flooded with tributes, remembering Frank as the gritty, lovable heart of American Pickers, the perfect counterbalance to Mike Wolfe's smooth charm. But just 6 weeks after the funeral, beneath the surface of mourning, a quiet investigation was launched in Iowa. It all started with a single detail. A local coroner spotted something off in the autopsy. Frank had a fatal amount of fentanyl in his system. At first, it might seem like a tragic side effect. Fentanyl is a potent painkiller, sometimes used in post-stroke care. But here's the twist: Frank had never been prescribed it. He had no medical history involving fentanyl. In fact, close friends revealed he feared the drug and refused to touch it. So how did it get into his body? The only logical answer was chilling someone had deliberately poisoned him. The red flags couldn't be ignored. Local authorities alerted the DEA, and soon, the FBI was involved. What began as a routine death inquiry quickly spiraled into a full-blown criminal case. Investigators scoured GPS data, call logs, deleted texts, and one name kept surfacing: Mike Wolfe. To fans, Mike was the face of charm, a creative force who turned junkyard hunts into TV gold. But behind the scenes, he was allegedly fixated on control over the show, its legacy, and especially Frank's place in it. After Frank's exit, Mike concealed the true reasons, quietly maneuvering behind the scenes. He trademarked the name Frankets just weeks after Frank's death. He contacted third parties to buy out Frank's share of the business, as if the tragedy were a business opportunity. And then came the smoking gun. A neighbor's doorbell camera captured Mike near Frank's house the very night prosecutors believed the fatal dose was delivered. The public didn't want to believe it. How could it be him? Mike Wolfe, the man who called Frank his brother, who shared the screen with him for over a decade. But evidence doesn't lie. And sometimes, the biggest smiles on television hide the darkest secrets of all. It felt like a reality show turned courtroom thriller, only this time, it was real. When the trial began, the nation couldn't look away. What unfolded wasn't just a legal case. It was a dark, suspense-filled drama, with every revelation more chilling than the last. Mike Wolfe, once celebrated as half of America's favorite treasure-hunting duo, stood accused not only of betraying Frank Fritz, his longtime friend and on-screen soulmate, but of something far worse, deliberately poisoning him to seize control of everything they had built together. His reputation, the brand, the legacy, it was all on the line. And as the weight of justice closed in, Mike collapsed in the courtroom, dying in front of the very system meant to hold him accountable. But his death wasn't the end. It was just another twist in one of reality television's darkest chapters. To truly understand how this unthinkable betrayal could happen, we have to go back before the trial, before the fallout, to when it all began. A friendship forged not in Hollywood boardrooms, but on the back roads of America. Two men, bonded over dust-covered warehouses, rusted signage, and forgotten treasures buried in barns. What could have shattered such a seemingly unbreakable bond? How did Mike Wolfe, the man who once called Frank his brother, become capable of such betrayal? In the early 2000s, reality TV was still a frontier. It wasn't all glitz, glam, or drama. It was about stories. And Mike Wolfe had one. He wasn't a trained actor, didn't have a media empire behind him, but he had vision, grit, and a passion for unearthing lost treasures. From a young age, Mike was knocking on doors in small towns, asking what folks had for sale. Most of the time, it was junk. Sometimes, it was gold. But what mattered was the hunt, the story behind every item. That vision eventually became American Pickers. It was never about just antiques. It was about people, nostalgia, and the thrill of discovery. And that's when Frank Fritz entered the picture. The polar opposite of Mike, in many ways calm, grounded, detail-oriented. While Mike lit up a room with energy and charm, Frank was the steady hand, a technical expert with a love for vintage toys and oil cans. They had known each other since high school, but their adult lives took them in different directions. Mike chased the dream full-time. Frank worked as a firefighter and safety inspector before finally diving into the antique world. When Mike needed a partner to help bring his dream show to life, Frank was the perfect fit, not because they were the same, but because they balanced each other perfectly. In 2009, after relentless pitching, the History Channel gave Mike the green light and American Pickers was born. Two guys in a van, traveling the forgotten corners of America, digging through dust and rust. But it wasn't the antiques that made the show a hit, it was the dynamic between Mike and Frank. Their chemistry, their banter, their shared love of history and storytelling captivated audiences. Mike's sharp negotiation tactics and eye for hidden value paired perfectly with Frank's deep knowledge and attention to detail. Each episode wasn't just a buying spree, it was an emotional journey. Viewers met aging collectors holding on to memories, families proud of heirlooms passed down through generations, and eccentrics who turned garages into museums of Americana. American Pickers never mocked these people, it celebrated them. And that heartfelt authenticity became its trademark, touching millions and turning a simple idea into a cultural phenomenon. As American Pickers soared in popularity, so did the fame of its stars. Mike Wolfe and Frank Fritz became household names, showing up at packed autograph signings, conventions, and events both big and small. Their growing celebrity turned Mike's antique archaeology stores in Iowa and Nashville into must-visit landmarks for loyal fans. But in the world of reality, TV success often comes with a hidden cost. The once unbreakable bond between Mike and Frank began to fracture. Fame opened new doors, but it also widened the cracks between them. Mike Wolfe gradually became the dominant face of the brand. He was increasingly front and center, doing more interviews, launching new ventures, and crafting a personal brand that extended far beyond the show. Behind the scenes, he took the reins as executive producer, brokered branding deals, and held creative control. Slowly but surely, the dynamic shifted from equal partners to something more one-sided. Mike wasn't just a co-star anymore, he was the boss. Those close to the production would later reveal that tension had been simmering for years. Frank felt shut out. His input was ignored, his ideas dismissed, and his role diminished. Crew members claimed Mike started treating American Pickers as his solo empire. And it wasn't just about ego, it was about ownership. Mike owned antique archaeology. Mike ran the production company. Mike made the final calls. By season 10, fans began noticing the difference. Frank was quieter, less visible. His screen time dropped, his name disappeared from promotional materials, and he was rarely seen in interviews. Rumors swirled, was he ill? Was there trouble behind the scenes? The show stayed silent, but the internet didn't. Then came the announcement Frank wouldn't be returning. The reason? A vague statement about taking time off to recover from back surgery. No clear answers. No promises. Just a carefully worded press line. But the real shock came in Mike Wolfe's reaction. Fans expected a heartfelt farewell, a tribute to the friend and co-star who had stood beside him for over a decade. Instead, they got a cold, dismissive Instagram post. No emotion, no gratitude, just a sterile wish him the best, as if Frank were nothing more than a disposable cast member. And just like that, the show went on without Frank. A new co-host was brought in. Ratings dipped. But the antique archaeology brand? It kept booming. Merchandise flew off the shelves. Mike Wolfe was still smiling on red carpets, doing interviews, acting like nothing had changed. Meanwhile, Frank Fritz had vanished from the spotlight. But behind the scenes, his world was unraveling. According to close friends, Frank wasn't just hurt, he felt completely betrayed. Not just by the show, but by Mike, the man he once called brother. Frank believed he was more than just a co-host. He saw himself as a co-founder, the soul of American Pickers. He had helped build the fan base, shaped the show's personality, and now he was being erased quietly and coldly. The rejection sent Frank spiraling. He fell into depression. He started drinking again, stopped making public appearances, gained weight, and withdrew from the world. The sadness consumed him. And then, the worst hit, he suffered a stroke. It marked the beginning of his tragic downfall. What truly happened between Mike and Frank remains a mystery. Some blame ego, others blame money, and some whisper of a deeper betrayal, one never caught on camera. Whatever the truth, the friendship that once fueled one of TV's most beloved shows had collapsed. Completely. Frank's death should have been a moment for reflection, for sorrow, for honoring a legacy. Instead, it raised even more questions. Mike Wolfe didn't attend the funeral. He didn't post a tribute. Not even a heartfelt message. Just silence. Cold, calculated silence. Fans were stunned, and rightly so. But behind the scenes, something bigger was brewing. Toxicology reports revealed fentanyl in Frank's system lethal levels. He had no prescription, no history of drug use. So who gave it to him? Who had something to gain from his death? And why was Mike Wolfe's phone pinging near Frank's house the night before he was found unconscious? Fame may look glamorous, but it cuts both ways. For Mike and Frank, it was a runaway train, fast, violent, and impossible to stop. As American Pickers exploded into a cultural phenomenon and the money poured in, the heart of the show began to disappear. Gone were the backroad hunts for dusty motorcycle relics or forgotten neon signs in crumbling garages. Now it was all contracts, branding, licensing deals, and power plays. And in that world, Mike Wolfe didn't just survive, he thrived. A sharp businessman, a brand builder, a mogul. Meanwhile, Frank, the man who had once walked every mile beside him, faded into the shadows. A casualty of the very empire he helped create. Behind the camera, Mike Wolfe was quietly consolidating his power. Piece by piece, he assembled a team of lawyers, agents, and PR strategists. He began trademarking key catchphrases and iconic elements tied to the American Pickers brand, turning them into intellectual property controlled entirely by him. From merchandise to media licensing, Mike built a sprawling empire that operated less like a TV show and more like a corporate machine. Meanwhile, Frank Fritz wanted none of that. His dream was simple: be on TV, meet passionate collectors, and find joy in discovering antiques with soul. But over time, that dream started to slip away. According to two of Frank's closest friends, the tone between him and Mike began to change drastically around season 6. One crew member recounted a heartbreaking moment during filming in Alabama for season 8. They visited a vintage car lot owned by a Korean War veteran. Frank struck up a deeply moving conversation with the man about his love for gas station memorabilia. It was a rare, genuine human moment, exactly what made the show special. But when the episode aired, the entire exchange had been cut. In its place, more footage of Mike haggling over prices, highlighting resale value. Frank was furious. He felt erased not just from the episode, but from a moment that mattered to him. And he wasn't alone. Crew members, shop owners, experts, even guest pickers began to notice a pattern. If a scene didn't serve to elevate Mike Wolfe's image, it didn't make the final cut. Over time, Mike seemed determined to be the hero in every episode. That control extended to every corner of the American Pickers brand. From the scripts to the social media posts, nothing happened without Mike's approval. He copyrighted the most popular phrases from the show, ensuring all merchandise profits flowed directly into his LLC. Even the show's official social accounts were no longer handled by the network, they were managed by Mike's private PR team. All interviews had to be vetted by his handlers. A former executive from the early seasons later revealed that Mike had mastered the art of weaponizing fame. He knew the network needed him, and he wasn't afraid to use that leverage, threatening to walk if things didn't go his way. And the truth was, things always went his way. On camera, the smile remained. But behind the scenes, Mike had become a bulldozer. And Frank? He saw it all. His frustration began to show during filming. Frank would walk off set during heated arguments. He stopped promoting the show altogether, bitter over how he was portrayed. He believed Mike was being elevated as the sole star, while he, an original co-founder, was being sidelined into a supporting role. The production team noticed too. The spontaneous laughter that once defined Mike and Frank's chemistry, gone, replaced with awkward scripted exchanges. Tension lingered between them. Off camera, they barely spoke. The truck, once a symbol of their shared journey and countless roadside stories, had grown cold and silent. Frank often drove alone, while Mike was busy expanding his empire. Mike bought properties in Tennessee and Iowa, transforming his stores into polished tourist destinations. Fans waited in long lines just to take photos in front of his office or sit in the iconic van. Merchandise exploded: shirts, mugs, signed crowbars, all bearing his name. As the seasons rolled on, the spotlight burned brighter on Mike, while Frank slowly disappeared into the shadows. Mike Wolfe had transformed. He wasn't just a showrunner anymore, he was a brand. As American Pickers skyrocketed in popularity, Mike began branching out with solo projects, leveraging his rising fame into new ventures. According to a former network executive, there were even quiet talks of launching an entirely new show starring Mike alone without Frank. When the rumors surfaced, Mike publicly denied them. But by then, the damage was done. The trust was already eroding. What cut Frank Fritz the deepest wasn't just the widening gap in their reputations, it was the silence. The quiet dismissal. Mike had started making decisions without him, changing scripts without his input, holding meetings he wasn't invited to. Frank felt invisible, a ghost in the very show he helped bring to life. American Pickers had once been a shared dream. Now, there was only one name in control, and it wasn't his. Then came the health battles. Years of grueling travel, poor diet, and relentless filming took a serious toll on Frank's body. He was diagnosed with Crohn's disease, a chronic and painful condition that made it difficult for him to function. On top of that, severe back pain forced him to undergo surgery. When he stepped away from the show, fans assumed it was just a break, a pause, a temporary recovery. But that comeback never came. The network issued a sterile statement, saying Frank was on medical leave. Fans flooded him with messages of love and support. Rumors of his return swirled online, giving hope to the faithful. But behind the scenes, silence. Frank never received a single call from producers. His name barely came up in meetings. And when he tried to reach out, the responses were vague, evasive, distant. Then, without warning, it was done. The decision had been made. Frank was gone. His name scrubbed from promos. His image replaced with a shiny new co-host. The show didn't skip a beat. It kept rolling forward without him. And Frank? He was left staring at the wreckage of a friendship he once believed was unbreakable. Months later, Frank finally spoke out. In a rare and emotional interview, he revealed the heartbreaking truth. He and Mike hadn't spoken in 2 years. 2 years of silence. 2 years without a single call or message. And in all that time, through pain, surgery, and isolation, what hurt him the most wasn't the illness, it was the cold indifference of the man he once called his best friend. How could the beloved duo behind American Pickers fall apart so coldly? Frank's disappearance had long been a mystery, But his words revealed a painful truth: he felt abandoned by the very people he helped build the show with, especially Mike Wolfe, who never once publicly acknowledged Frank's departure. After leaving the spotlight, Frank fell into a deep depression. Friends say he isolated himself, stopped returning calls, and struggled with serious health issues. Then came the stroke. He was found unconscious in his Iowa home, rushed to the ICU. At first, it seemed like a tragic collapse from illness and stress, until the toxicology report revealed a lethal dose of fentanyl in his system. It wasn't prescribed, and Frank, terrified of needles, would never used it willingly. An autopsy confirmed the worst. Frank had been injected with a synthetic form of fentanyl 40 times stronger than heroin. A small puncture wound was found on his upper thigh. This wasn't an accident. It was murder. The investigation led to a shocking arrest. Mike Wolfe, once America's favorite picker, was charged with first-degree murder and tampering with evidence. In court, he appeared worn and grim, denying all charges, claiming the case was built on circumstantial evidence. But the prosecution told a darker story. They painted Mike as a man obsessed with control, someone who saw Frank not as a partner, but as an obstacle. Emails revealed his intent: when this is all mine, we can finally scale without any obstacles. A psychologist described Mike's behavior as textbook narcissism. And now, the nation watches as one of TV's most iconic friendships ends in betrayal, tragedy, and a trial that could change everything. And everyone in the courtroom understood he wasn't just talking about the show. He was talking about Frank. Prosecutors weren't just charging Mike Wolfe. They were painting a chilling picture of a calculated, cold-blooded decision. This wasn't a crime of passion. It was the final step in a long, strategic campaign to eliminate anyone who stood in the way of Mike's total control. The smile that had charmed millions and sealed multi-million-dollar deals was gone. Standing before the court was not a beloved television personality, but a man stripped bare by the unforgiving light of justice. Detectives had begun piecing together the pieces just 3 weeks after Frank's death. Behind the scenes, Mike had quietly filed legal documents to gain control of Frank's likeness and signature. At the same time, his attorney had filed a formal request to remove Frank from all ownership stakes in antique archaeology. These secretive moves only deepened suspicion. And then the autopsy confirmed what many feared: a small wound in Frank's upper thigh. An area that would be nearly impossible to self-inject, especially after a stroke. The concentration of fentanyl in Frank's system was astronomical enough to kill instantly, and medical experts agreed that it had been injected intentionally. As the evidence mounted: surveillance footage, phone records, financial documents, and harrowing witness testimony, Mike Wolfe remained silent in court. No denial, no emotion, just a cold, unreadable stare. It became harder and harder to believe that this was the same man Frank had once seen laughing with in dusty warehouses and cluttered garages across America. Then came the formal charges: first degree, 2 counts of obstruction of justice, and 1 count of unauthorized use of a deceased person's digital identity. Mike was held without bail. His legal team issued a statement calling the charges completely false, saying Mike loved Frank like a brother and was devastated by his passing. But the silence, the timing, and the case file tell a different story, and now the world is waiting to see if the man who helped build a legacy will be the one to bury it.